so that I can distribute it to everybody who's in the community. And now I've got to find out how to make Scott a co-host. So, and then we can get started. Let's see. Scott. No, I can see how. I just got to go to his, if I could find his name, but there's so many people coming in, I just keep getting kicked off. Forgive me for a moment here. It's been a while since I've led these webinars, and I want to make my partner Scott, could you, oh, there you are. Now I see you more. Let's see.
Thanks, Michael.
Make a co-host. There you are.
All right.
Scott is now a co-host. Thank you. So you're going to manage now the admitting all the people that are coming in?
Correct. I'll take care of it.
Great. Okay. So, well, let's just go ahead and get started. My name is Michael Santos, and I'm just so grateful every time I see our community growing with people who are justice impacted. I really am really privileged to be able to do this. I was in prison for 26 years, and at the very start of my journey, it was always a goal to try and help people get through this period of time in a manner that is more successful than I made. I made really bad decisions at the start of the journey, and it cost me dearly. And we were just speaking with somebody in the earlier part before this show who was on the webinar because he has a friend who's about to get sentenced, and my recommendation to him was she should really be on this webinar because there are certainly steps that a person can take before sentencing that are so important. And because of that, I like to give like this scenario of helping people understand what it means to kind of architect a mitigation strategy. For me, this mitigation strategy really there are different things to do at different stages of the journey, and we call it a mitigation arc in our group, because anybody that's going through this system, they are going through some kind of stage, and there is always something that they should be doing, but they should simultaneously be thinking about what other people are doing in this system. And so today I created this really simple PowerPoint slide that I'm going to share with the members of our team to kind of guide us through the beginning stages of our webinar. So I'm going to share my screen, but there's really nothing on this slide other than this image to just kind of help everybody understand what do you know? If you don't know that you're coming into the system and today at the earliest stage is the time to begin preparing, what else don't you know? What else don't you know about this system? This young lady that we were just talking about that is not yet sentenced yet, she may not know that this is the best time, the most likely time that she could be working to influence where she is placed. Too many times we encounter people who didn't understand that at the earliest stage, and they get sentenced to a prison on the other side of the country, which just makes it harder, the adjustment, not only on the individual, but also on the family members. So to start this webinar, I'm just going to kind of walk through what I'll be talking about today, just to kind of remind people, because there was a time, if you're on this webinar, if you've been justice impacted and you're coming into this system, there was a time that you probably thought it was more likely that you would get leprosy than you would become a target of the criminal justice system. It's so unusual. And yet there are things that you know that you are doing that could potentially, you could think, well, this could potentially put me in the crosshairs, but you're not thinking about it. Sometimes you don't think. I like to use this analogy of the Johari's witness, that Johari's window, which says, look at life from 4 quadrants. What you know and others know about who you are, what you know but others don't know. Maybe I could be the target of an investigation. What others know but you don't know. I mean, you're sitting there going through your life thinking everything is fine, but there are other people that are looking at your life and figuring out, okay, how am I going to build a case about this person? And you don't even know about that. And then, of course, there are many other things that you don't know and other people don't know. And this Johari's window, I could talk about in every stage that I'm going to be discussing in this mitigation arc. So you'll just see today, what I want to talk about is your life. Try to think to that time before you were ever a target of a criminal investigation. And then think about what happened. Sometime there was an investigation going on. You may not have known it. You don't even know how it started. You may not know about this concept of witnesses that the government investigators are talking to, or whether you've become perhaps the subject of an investigation and what mitigation steps you should be taking at that stage. You may not know what happens once you're a target of an investigation. And if you're on this webinar, I hope by the end of the webinar, you're going to ask some of those questions about these different phases, what's going on at this investigation stage. And then also be thinking about the reason that's so important is because the earlier somebody starts to prepare, the better chance they might have in creating some type of influence over the type of charge. Sometimes a charge may not have a mandatory minimum. Sometimes it does. Sometimes a charge may have a statutory cap of 1 year. Sometimes it may have a statutory cap of 40 years. So if you can mitigate effectively with your counsel, you may have a better chance of persuading a prosecutor to charge you with a statute that puts a cap on the maximum amount of sentence somebody can get. These are very important things to think about, but you may already be beyond that. Maybe the next stage is this plea. What am I going to do if I plead guilty, or if I go to trial, or if I enter into a plea agreement? What do all of these different factors mean? If you're not thinking about that, then you're really not doing everything you possibly can to prepare for the best outcome. But you shouldn't only be thinking about it from your perspective. I'm going to ask you, do you know what others are thinking about, including your response here? How will that influence a judge? How will that influence a prosecutor? How will your response influence the administrators in the Bureau of Prisons that you're going to meet later? You should be thinking about all of these things very early, and you should know what happens after this plea. After this plea, of course, there's this very important stage called the pre-sentence investigation report. Sometimes people go into it completely blind. They don't have guidance from their attorney on what to expect. They've never heard of a pre-sentence investigation report previously, and so they may not be able to influence that report in such a way that will help them or influence them later in the process. And everybody who's going through the process knows this at that stage, but what happens next? Well, the next stage is going to be that sentencing hearing. And whatever you're doing at this stage in your mitigation arc, it should be a little bit different than what exists at this stage, because the Bureau of Prisons and the whole justice system, in my experience, it's really all about seeing progressive growth. That's what this system wants to see, is progressive growth. So at your pre-sentence investigation hearing, you should already have a plan in place for mitigation. At your sentencing hearing, that plan should have evolved. It should be more elaborate. You should be able to talk about what's different in your life. What steps have you taken to make yourself a better candidate for a better outcome? And the more you think about this, the earlier you start thinking about this, not only from your perspective, but from everybody else's perspective, all stakeholders, the more effective you're going to be at architecting a plan. And then you've got this other concept that very few people even think about, because you don't know, the RRC, which is the Residential Reentry Center and Home Confinement Program. If you don't know what other people are thinking in this concept, you might not be building the best mitigation strategy. And sometimes there's just so much to learn, can be so overwhelming that you want to ask questions. And that's why we host these webinars, so that we could say, are you thinking about this stage? Because if you're going into the system right now, like we're talking about that young lady who's just getting sentenced, she should be thinking about this stage 8 in our mitigation arc way back here before the PSR. The earlier you start thinking about these concepts, the more effective you're going to be about architecting a plan that will lead you to a better outcome. Then there's this section here, the mitigation, the supervised release period. Some people don't have any concept of what that means. We're only thinking about solving the problem in the moment. But the reality, as I experienced it, is if you're not prepared, supervised release can be another type of prison. And in some cases, some people will say it's worse. And we'll hear about that today from some of the members of our community who have gone through these different stages. Well, after you've finished supervised release, I mean, it's my hope that you've sown seeds really early so that you're in a very good position to advocate for early termination or a high level of liberty on supervised release. But at some point, life is going to resume, and you're going to go back to just being a citizen. But even when you're a citizen, you're always going to be a justice impacted person. There are always going to be collateral consequences. And you need to be thinking about those collateral consequences right now. What are they? What are they going to do in your life? And what ways are they going to influence your future? So I wanted to just talk about these different strategies today. And see if I can stop sharing my screen. I see it says, Scott, that you didn't admit a lot of people. So I don't know if it's working or not. But in any event, I've just admitted everybody again. So, and this is all recorded. My hopes are that you see us as a trusted guide to help you through this journey. The one thing I always promise people is I would never ask anybody to do anything that I didn't do while going through this process. But one thing that I hear a lot, and I hear it from this area here, like I'll show you what some of you don't know how people correspond when they're in prison. Scott, just so you know, I'm seeing somebody that's trying to get in, but you're not admitting them in. Are you not seeing that?
I just hit admit, so
Okay.
I have no one in the queue right now.
Okay, so just to make sure that everybody can get in who wants to get in.
Yeah.
I'm going to share my screen again and just kind of show you what comes from prisons, how people communicate with us when they're in prison. So I've got to go to Google Chrome right here, share. And if I go to this section right here and go to core links, this is members of our community that communicate with us. You'll see we get a lot of these questions from people in prison, and it's never going to stop. When people go to prison, there are hundreds and hundreds of questions that come to us, and I do my best to respond to everybody. And the way I respond is I keep this, just so you know what'll happen if you're in our community and you go to prison. What do? I have a team, and we record all of these questions that come from here. We record them here, and then I just go in there and respond to all of these questions as we go through. So the reason I point this out, though, is because too frequently I get questions from people that we could we mute, ask to mute, there we go. What we should do is we should be covering all of these concepts here on these webinars. So when somebody goes to prison, they feel more confident that they know what's coming. Because if you've all been successful in your life in some capacity, but then you come into this world and you're totally in the dark, the more, to the extent that we can help people understand every stage of the mitigation arc, we can help people understand why they should do things at one stage that might be different at a different stage. You might be planting seeds today, but the seeds that you're planting are for apples you want to eat, 6 months from now or 2 years from now. And the earlier you start sowing those seeds, the better you are. So that's kind of what I want to talk about today. I also want to make sure that everybody gets an opportunity to to ask any questions. So on the bottom of this screen, I hope that you all can see it. there's a section there that says, where is the one where people can raise their hands? It's there. It's under reactions on the bottom of this Zoom screen. Is it there? Let's see. Yeah, there's a section there at the bottom of there that says raise hand. So if somebody has something that they would like me to respond to, I would like them to raise their hand so that they could feel free to ask a question. But in the interim, I'd also like to share some other members of our team who've gone through this journey. And I see that Richie, are you the fellow that I was speaking to about your PSR? Why don't you tell them about your experience and what stage of the journey you are in right now, and how your earlier preparations have put you in a position for where you are? Can you unmute yourself and share? There we go.
Yeah. Can you guys hear me?
We all hear you.
So I was, my investigation began on October 14th of 2021. And by October 16th, I was starting my journey of recovery and treatment. So that's step one. So within 2 days of my investigation, I began my own recovery. And then fast forward, and I began documenting my journey between then and June of 22 when I got arrested. So I had 8 months of recovery and treatment and a lot of great things. I was sponsoring people. So I got arrested, and I've been following you guys, and I started working with you guys right around then too. But I came with a lot of homework already completed, which is important. And then I started working with Justin and Scott, and I did the character letters. I did the personal narrative, the release plan, and the allocution. And so I submitted my PSI with my personal statement and my release plan. When I got my PSI back, it had my release plan and my personal statement throughout the entire thing. And
wait a second. I want to ask a question. Are you saying in your PSR, it had your entire statement in your PSR?
Correct.
Okay, so let's put a pin in that so we can discuss why that's so important. Now continue, Richie.
Yes, and then my release plan wasn't fully in there, but she took out the pieces of my release plan and put them into program goals and things that I wanted to do. And because of that, I had submitted my PSI prior to my interview. So when I came to my PSI, she had already created my PSI with all my stuff in there. And then we did the interview. And then I got my PSI back. And I was able to, because her original recommendations had put a lot of.
Oh, I made a mistake, Richie, and I muted you by mistake. I apologize. Could you unmute yourself?
Yes.
Sorry.
So specifically because of the documents that I submitted, she adjusted with my lawyer, and she approved my supervision. Major recommendations were removed so I could have more liberty. And now when the judge has my sentencing, he'll have all my documentation.
So when is your sentencing date?
April 6th.
Oh, so it's coming up. Now, the reason that I asked him about making sure that he had that narrative in there, it's not, sometimes the only thing we're thinking about in the very beginning is sentencing. We're only thinking about sentencing, and it's understandable because we've just gone through the trauma of getting charged with a crime, and we're only thinking about sentencing. Sadly, it doesn't end at sentencing. This process of being justice impacted, it stays with us for, well, I mean, I've been out of prison for 10 years now, and I still live it every day. It's something that drives me every day, 7 days a week, because I understand there are always going to be collateral consequences when somebody is a felon in the United States. So the more you could sow seeds early, like getting on record very early your remorse, getting on record very early you're building a release plan. You're architecting a strategy to show, I want to be a law-abiding citizen. The more you can do that, the stronger you are going to be to overcome some of the challenges that other people face when they come home. Now, I'm going to give you an example. I wish this fellow could be on our webinar today, but he just got released from prison 2 days ago. And when he got released from prison, one of the first things the halfway house person says to him, what was it, Carol? Could you remind me? He said, I know about your argument, but why did she say that? Okay, so here's the challenge. You get out of prison, you go to a halfway house, and while you're in the halfway house, you have another case manager. And that case manager is going to put rules on you. But you still have this other complication that's called life. And this person has health complications. So he has to go to the doctor. And what was it? He had an appointment to go to the doctor. And he was right. So he asked permission to go to the doctor. They gave him permission to go, say, at 10:30. He left his house to be there on time. So he left at 10 for the appointment at 10:30. When he went to the halfway house to check in, the halfway house accused him of lying because the appointment was at 10:30 and he left his house at 10. So her comment to him is, you're already lying to us. And that's why I wanted to start off by you thinking not only in terms of how you view the world, it's super important to be thinking about how stakeholders are going to view you. And the earlier you could start thinking about that, the earlier you could start sowing seeds to overcome it. Now, I've asked Scott Laney to tell his story before about when he was in prison and he first got to the halfway house. The thought was, I'd rather be back in prison, but walk them through your experience, Scott, in that front.
Sure. What you were saying, Michael, really resonated with me, is that it is imperative to prepare for all the stages of this journey. And I was following your insight, but I was still hopeful. I'm out of prison. I'll get to the halfway house. Everything's going to fall into place. And there's still a lot of people who don't know you. And lucky for me, having a good release plan was a way to influence those stakeholders before they had a chance to meet me. But like most things in the Bureau of Prisons, humility and patience go a long way. And for me, it was just about setting realistic expectations as to what comes next in the process and what liberties I might be able to earn, and not what liberties are just going to be given to me.
So thank you, Scott. And this is in my work, which is the advocacy side of our company. That's primarily what I do, is I try to change the way the system works. It's super important for me to share this with all of you, but it's equally important to share this with 10,000 or 50,000 or 500,000 people in prison. Everything in our work is really built around this concept that we incarcerate too many people and they serve sentences that are far too long. But in order to change this process, I need to build coalitions. And you're part of that coalition. If you're on this webinar, you are part of that coalition. But you have a duty. That means you also have a duty and a responsibility to understand the system, to ask questions about what's coming, to make sure that you understand. And let me explain to you why that's so important. And please feel free to raise your hand. If you have questions here, feel free, or just unmute yourself, because it works way better if it's interactive with anybody. So there's like 100 people on here or 70 people on here, and I know that there should be questions. Please, my hopes are that you won't wait until you're in prison to ask these questions. But I want to give you this story about why what Richie said he is doing, what Scott said he is doing, is so important, but it's equally important to share this with people in prison. Yesterday, for example, I was on a phone call with the Bureau of Prisons, and the purpose of this call of the Bureau of Prisons is because if you don't know that the Bureau of Prisons is under really attack from a lot of media and government government sources. I'll just share it with you. I'm going to just share my screen. So here is my screen. And I always say there's nothing I'm telling that somebody can't look up and learn by themselves. But these are things like the Government Accounting Office. This came out in March 20th, so just 3 days ago, and it's federal prisons. It's the Bureau of Prisons should improve efforts to implement its risk and needs assessment system. This is going to influence every one of you that's on this webinar. These types of facts. 45% of the people that are released from federal prison are rearrested or returned within 3 years. Those are facts. That means, basically a simple math, more than, approximately between 4 and 5 people right now that are on this webinar, of 10 of them, according to the statistics, out of every 10, 4 to 5 of them are going to return to federal prison within 3 years. That doesn't mean it's because they're bad people. That doesn't mean it's because they committed a new crime. It's because there are so many technical reasons that somebody can get returned to prison without breaking a law. Just like I was just talking about. Oh, the halfway house said they were supposed to be at the appointment at 10:30, but they left at 10. Response, put them back in prison. There are so many of these complications that people may not know, and it's very important to show them. So the salient point I'm trying to make is that don't think it's not going to happen to you. Think, because then you're only thinking about yourself. I want you to think about the people who are going to be judging you, the people that are going to have enormous discretion over your life going forward. How are they seeing you? And I'm just going to ask somebody to unmute themselves, somebody who is willing to genuinely say, I want to go and be a part of this engagement. Because what you should be willing to do is role play, okay? Role play so that you are ready to ask these questions. So I'm going to ask, is there
I'm ready. This is Ardina.
Hi, but Ardina, you're not justice impacted, are you?
Well, I'm supporting people who are. I'm in that support group. I may not be a jailer, but I'm trying to help those people who are justice impacted.
And so maybe the better thing for you to do is kind of watch this exercise. I'm going to ask somebody that hasn't gone to prison yet, that is going to prison, to unmute themselves. Because if you're not prepared to do this with me, I guarantee you're not going to be prepared to do it when you're with a case manager, okay, in prison. So is there somebody—
I'm going to prison.
Okay, I see, but somebody raised their hand. Let me ask that person first. Is it Julian? Julian, is that you? And then I'll get to everybody, okay? Julian, make sure that you unmute yourself.
Yes, I just did. Did you get it? Can you hear me?
I hear you, and everybody else can hear you. So let me ask you a question, Julian. I've not spoken with you before. Is that correct?
We spoke briefly for about 10 minutes.
We did? Oh, I apologize for not remembering.
Oh, no, it's okay. It's okay.
Julian, I want to ask you a question. When are you surrendering?
April 27th. I don't have
April
the
27th.
information yet.
And,
yes.
and just what is your sentence length?
15 months.
And so you're going to say, can you envision there's going to come a time you're going to sit across the table from a case manager, and you're going to be arguing for why you are a worthy candidate of home confinement. Do you anticipate that time?
Yes.
Good. Make your case.
I have it pretty much set out in my release plan.
I'm your case manager right now. Okay. Tell me I am your case manager. I want to talk to you like I'm a case manager.
Yes.
Okay. Because I want you to be ready to respond to these people. Go ahead.
I began with my release plan. I have this release plan packet with me. I'd like to give it to you so we can start the process. Hopefully,
I don't really have time for that, Julian. I get these from all kinds of people. Let me just ask you, why didn't you think about this before you committed a crime?
Never thought I'd be in this situation.
But did you break the law? I mean, this is what's going to happen, right?
Yes, I did.
This is what's going to happen. And so we've all got to be ready, because we see ourselves as one way, but the system sees us as something else. And I had to fight those battles. I still fight those battles. Okay. and I want you to be super strong. So I want to have you super ready. And so that release plan, it's only a tool. It is neither good nor bad. It's just a tool. And you have to learn how to use that tool as a strategy builder. And it's my job to teach you that. It's our team's job to teach you that. So do you know what you're going to do? And I know that I'm putting you on the spot because I haven't had this conversation with you before. I know you scheduled a call with me for tomorrow afternoon, and I'm looking forward to doing that. But we can almost do it right now for the benefit of everybody in our community. Because when we're building a release plan, and then I want to hear from the lady who unmuted herself. Just let me give this response to Julian.
Okay.
Okay. But when you are preparing a release plan, that release plan is designed. I'm going to tell you the backstory. The backstory came because I create programs to try and change the Bureau of Prisons. I'm always advocating. And one of the things that I've learned from that advocacy is the emphasis that the Bureau of Prisons is putting on release plans. It's going to be a very big push. And because of my work, I know about that. And so I started hiring, first of all, former BOPers, what does a best-in-class release plan look like? And what I learned is they don't rely on, and I use the word people, they like to use the word inmate, but I know we're all just people. And so they don't really, they try to get a case manager to put it together. But a case manager is always going to be overworked.
Not quite. Give me a few minutes.
Is always going to be focused on their own life and their own career. They're never going to care as much about your success upon release as you are, Julian, and as everybody else is. So the goal for me, if they're a member of our community, is the day you surrender. Well, it's not going to be the day you surrender. The day you have what's called your initial classification, your first team meeting, you come with this plan and you say something along these lines. I obviously have been very nervous and concerned about coming to prison. It's disrupted my life. And I've done a lot of research on the Bureau of Prisons website. I've learned a great deal about what the Bureau of Prisons' motto is for defining excellence and what is the best-in-class approach of what they're trying to produce. And so I've studied all of their factors with the risk assessments and the needs assessments. And I've put my plan together with hopes of showing I've really given serious thought to my criminal behavior and what I am doing to make amends and reconcile and build my life. And your plan, and I prepared this plan for you, and I would like you to make it a part of my central file now. I didn't go there the first day saying, let me out of prison. I didn't go out of prison and say, when am I going to get home confinement? I simply said, I want to be better. And before I got here, I studied your website and I learned about these tools. I read the First Step Act. I'm familiar with what I'm supposed to do. I wanted to do all of that before I went to prison. Then you're going to have another meeting, Julian. And that next meeting, because you've got a relatively short sentence, I know it's not short to you, 15 months away from your family is very long, but in the Bureau of Prisons context, remember, 10 years is a short sentence in the Bureau of Prisons. So 15 months, 30 months, 40 months, you're not going to get the attention of somebody that's got 8 years or 18 years. So you want to show I'm totally self-directed. I've got my head in the game all the way. And I gave them this plan the first month I got here. And the next time I go before a team meeting in 3 months, you'd better have done something more. You'd better do something more. You keep building. And that's what we want to help you do, because that's what's going to make you a better candidate come the time when you're looking for home confinement. But remember that the release plan is not only about getting out of prison early. It's also about getting ready when you go to an RRM. Earlier in the webinar, when I started off, I expressed the importance of saying, I've got to be thinking today about my time when somebody at the reentry center is going to be judging whether I can get out to home confinement. because there are multiple agencies involved here. And you've got to be thinking about the time when you're going to meet with a probation officer a year from now, 2 years from now. And that probation officer has a whole new level of authority on your life. What do you do for a living, Julian?
I have a party rental business. I'm
So you're in
self-employed.
business, you're an entrepreneur. So
Yes.
what I want you thinking about right now, and that's what your release plan is for, is how do you overcome a manager in a residential reentry center that says, no, 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 we don't want anybody working for their own business or a friend's business. We have a job opportunity at the Salvation Army. You're going to start. They need people packing boxes from 11 p.m. until 6 in the morning. And I'd like you to take that job, right? You got to be thinking about these are possibilities that happen for a lot of people. And you've got to say, okay, I'm sowing seeds today so that I don't have that problem a year from now. And the more aware you are about how the system works, the more effective you're going to be at overcoming it. And that's what I take into prisons, because I know what I'm advocating for. I'm advocating that if you've got minimum security, if you've got a job, if you've got a place to live, you should be at home. You shouldn't be in prison. But that takes a tremendous amount of work and labor and time. And I don't know if I'm going to succeed. And I don't know if anybody here is going to get the benefit from it, but I can show you it's not just a dream. It's seeing things that are happening. This is the government telling the Bureau of Prisons what they should do differently. And I'll be writing this and sending this out in a blog to all members of our community after I completely digest it. But it's like a 100-page document, and I've already read 40, 50 pages of it. That's really giving me hope about changes that are going to come. But all of those changes, I want people to be in a very high level position to get the benefits of those changes. And that is what the release plan is about. Here's another important study that was just released in March of 23 from the Department of Justice. And it's talking about what did we learn from the pandemic and how many people got out, and what should the Bureau of Prisons recommendations, what should the Bureau of Prisons be doing? Well, it should be the Bureau of Prisons, this is the Department of Justice giving recommendations to the Bureau of Prisons on what changes should be making. Well, because of my work, I already know a lot of the changes that they're trying to make. And this concept of more access to furloughs, more access to a federal work release program. These are all seeds that many people are planting, but it's going to take time before we can eat fruit from those seeds. In order for it to succeed, I know I need people in prison doing what they have to do. I know that people that are going to prison, I need to suggest what you have to do. And you can count on me to work on what I have to do. But this is an ecosystem we have to build to change what I call one of the great social injustices of our time. And anybody that's in this community is part of that group. So now there was another lady that wanted to share her story or something, and I don't know, I can't see who it is, but please unmute yourself and let me respond.
Yeah, it's me. I'm Charlene Scott.
Hello, Charlene.
And hi. And I've been working, I guess, with your company for the past couple of weeks with a very nice young lady, Carol.
Oh my God, you don't have any idea how nice she is. I married her in prison.
She's
get her on this
wonderful.
video, but she doesn't like to get on video with me.
Okay. Well, I'll just be honest. I'm 68 years. Well, I'll be 68 on my self-surrender date, which is April 7th. And I'm scared to death. I've got health issues. My husband's got health issues. And I know this is something I have to do. I made some poor choices. I own up to that. But prior to this, I had no kind of criminal record. I'm not sure what to say to this lady. So could you role play with me just a little bit?
I can
too?
absolutely. it's not only this lady. And I don't want to scare people and say everything's going to be a bad experience. Okay, because it's not. But I don't prepare you well by letting people say, I mean, we used to have members of our team that they would just tell people what they wanted to hear. And I'd have to remove them from our team because that's not helpful. Prison is
Right.
not the Ritz-Carlton. Prison is prison. And a federal judge imposes a sentence. And the Bureau of Prisons, their job, Charlene, is to carry out the judge's orders. So if we begin our concept in our life, if we begin by saying, okay, who goes to work for the prison system? Let's just kind of start off with that concept. What, may I ask, what do you do for a living, Char?
Oh, I haven't worked in years.
But there was there a time that you worked?
Yeah, I did. Yeah, that's how I got in trouble. But the last job I had was at Wyndham Vacation Resorts. I was in sales.
You're in timeshare.
Yes.
Okay, so you're in timeshare sales. Okay, so let me just try and put this into perspective for you. Whatever role you were in any role that you were successful, there was some reason that you went into that space. Who goes into the space and says, I want to go work for the Bureau of Prisons? Just what is your perception of that person right now? What do you think?
Oh, that's scary to me. First of all, I would never want to do a job like that.
No, but we're not talking about you. We're talking about the people you're sitting across. What motivates them?
I don't know. Maybe it was the only job they could get. And
see, I don't want you thinking that way.
Oh, okay.
That's going to hurt you, Char.
Okay.
Okay. Because it's going to come out of your pores. You've got it. It's very important for us to go into this system.
Please help me, because I don't want to screw up. Please.
No, I don't want you to screw up. I want to be I want to be completely honest with you, because this is a fight that I have all the time. I'm always trying to change the system. And there are going to be some people, there's a lot of roles in this that try to change the system. Okay. I like to use the analogy of Frederick Douglass a lot. Do you know Frederick Douglass?
Yes.
Okay. So
He's
you know that
advocate,
he was
yeah.
born into slavery.
Yes.
And then he escaped from being slavery. And then he became free. But he didn't just go off and live his life in freedom. He devoted his life to trying changing slavery. He became one of the great voices for the abolition of slavery.
Yes.
And he used his personal story to do that. Okay. So that's kind of what inspired me in prison. As I said, I'll find a way to use my 26 years in prison to try and change the system for everybody else. And what Frederick Douglass used to say is he used to get criticized for, say, people would say, well, why are you talking with the people that own slaves? And why are you talking, or the people that support slavery, or the people that support the laws? And they would criticize him. And he said, I don't need to convince the people in slavery that it's bad. I need to convince the slave owners, right?
Correct.
That's how I need you to think. You don't need to convince me that you shouldn't be going to prison, okay? I need you to convince those people. And so when you're sitting across the table from somebody who works for the prison system, what I'd like you to be thinking of beginning, why do they work here? Well, they work here because they just want a job and they want a pension and they want insurance but that's what people go to work for the government for. Okay. But they measure success by carrying out the order of the judge, carrying out the order of the prosecutor. They are not looking at you, Char.
Right.
Okay. I used to use, you're just a number. I was number 163777004 for 26 years. That was my number. That was my name. That's how they saw me. I used to use this analogy. I said, yeah, in Mark, you're in sales. Maybe you're familiar with Seth Godin in his book, the Purple Cow. Are you familiar with that?
No.
I use this analogy because he would talk about marketing. He said, when you're driving down the road and you see a pasture filled with cows, nobody looks. But if you see a purple cow, everybody's going to stop and look. Okay.
Right.
So when you're going into prison, tough to say, but we're just a bunch of cows. That's all we are. We're all cattle. Okay. You have to be a purple. You have to be different. You have to stand out. And the way you stand out is by being very different from everybody else, because everybody in that system is going to be saying, oh, they only work here because they got another job. These are people that couldn't do this. And that never helps them. I want you to help yourself. And you help yourself by going in there and being respectful, always, but also demonstrating that you really understand the system and you understand the rules. And that's why I said in your release plan, if you have a good release plan, it's going to show I took time before I even got to prison to really understood what the system is supposed to do. I understand that I am supposed to have a plan. I understand that I'm supposed to understand the risk assessment, the needs assessment, how they are going to measure me. And of course, we can help you kind of architect that out. We've got a lot of free stuff on our website, but I can write it, I can produce it. I can't make everybody learn it unless they want to. So congratulations for raising your hand and being willing to get on here. But when you go to that case manager, Shar, I want you to be able to say, you know, I've done a lot of work. This has been very traumatizing for me. I've always considered myself a law-abiding citizen, and this is an aberration in my life. But because I took it so seriously, I researched the internet, I researched the Bureau of Prisons webpage, I've learned about what they define success as, and I've built this release plan consistent with that. And I definitely want to get the wisdom and the experience of my unit team. Those are the people that are going to theoretically be in charge of you, and say, I want to listen to you, but this is how I started. And then what you've got to do, just as you did in your career, you've got to enhance yourself. Every month, you've got to be working on yourself. So when it comes time to make the case, you've got to be different. And
Okay.
there's nobody that can do that for you but you. I can show you what to do.
Right.
I can show you what I did, and I want to show you what I did, and I want to show you why it worked for me. But this is going to be a process, and the more you learn, the more effective you're going to be at self-advocating for yourself. Does that make
Thank you
sense?
so much. Yes, thank you.
So we want to make sure that you get everything possible, because you want to get out of there at the earliest possible time. And maybe I can give you some quick insight on that. What is your sentence length?
46 months.
Okay. And do you qualify for RDAP?
Well, Carol's working on that with me. We were trying to get my PSR, amended, because I was sentenced 5 years ago, but because of my husband's surgeries and a bunch of stuff, I was getting continuances.
So that's a good point, what you just said. Okay. I started the webinar, for those of you who've come in late, by showing this kind, and it's going to be on our webpage, so you don't have to see it again. But I spoke about this mitigation arc. And I spoke about the first fellow that was on there that said he was on a video because he was concerned about a friend of his who was about to be sentenced. There are things that we can do very early that are easier to do than later. It's never too early. It's never too late to sow seeds for something better. But the sooner somebody starts sowing that seed, the better off they are. If Shar had known about RDAP and what it takes to qualify when they first did the PSR, she wouldn't have to be doing something which she just said, amend the PSR later, which is very, very difficult. So the more somebody learns, the earlier somebody learns, the better off that person is going to be to position themselves for something better, position themselves for the best outcome. You know, I know people in our community. Scott, you could tell her your experience on 46 months. Your sentence was 46 months, Scott?
42 months.
42. And you served how long in prison?
I was there for 13 and a half months.
So would that be successful
Wow.
for you, Shar, to say that's what's possible?
I
right?
would feel like I've died and gone to heaven.
Well, let's not
I
go
really
to heaven
would.
quite yet. But let's
Wow.
make sure that we realize success doesn't come by accident. You didn't, become successful in other areas of your life by accident. You worked and you built and you continued to build, and you didn't outsource it. Too many people just outsource things to their attorneys and think their attorney is going to solve everything. Unfortunately, that's not how the system works. We've got to always be investing in ourselves. always be working to build a pathway to get an outcome. So that's what I wanted to share with you, Shar. But maybe there's
Thank you.
somebody else that has a question. I would like
Thank
to
you so
respond.
much.
Thank you, Shar. Thanks for being a part of our community. Is there somebody
Absolutely.
else that has a question that they would like a response to? Because I want to make sure that we're going over everything. Okay.
Michael, I did have one.
Okay. Thank you for just popping in there, Jess. Is that Jesse?
Yeah, that's when I was earlier, but I got busy at work, so I had to go real quick.
That's okay. I see I've got Jason and Jose up there waiting, so I'm going to talk to them as well. And if anybody else does, we're here to serve the best of our ability. So please, Jesse, go ahead.
So what I noticed on an email I had received from Carol, I believe, probably an automated one, and I was the one that's in California. I noticed on the email there's it says something about all California state prisons have your courses for milestone credits or something rather. So I wanted just to touch on that of what that is exactly, because more than likely I'll probably be here.
Is that was your question? You want to know about that?
Yes.
Okay,
yes.
Let me share it with you. Okay, so this is an example of that. I'll send this to anybody who would like it. Just send an email to us. Let's see here. You can share my screen. Oh, I got to share the other screen. I'm sorry, I shared the wrong screen. I got to share this window. Stop sharing. I'm going to show you, and I'm going to give you the backstory on it as well. So Adobe Acrobat here. So this is an example. Okay, this is a course that's called Preparing for Success After Prison. Can you see that course, Jesse?
Yes, I can.
Okay, so I'm going to give you the backstory of this course and why it's part of our efforts and what it means to have a milestone course or an earned time credit course or all these things that I use in different prison systems. So let me stop sharing right now. So 10 years ago, there was no such thing as the First Step Act. It didn't exist. 15 years ago, it didn't exist. But now you have these things called earned time credits. They are what allows people that are serving, say, 10 years to get out in potentially 6 years, or Scott to serve to get 42 months and get out in 13 months. It's because it's a combination of these incentives. But those incentives didn't just miraculously appear overnight. 15 years ago or so, if you haven't gotten this book, you'll get this book. I wrote this book called Earning Freedom, and it was describing the importance of incentivizing excellence. And how do you incentivize it? You allow a person to work towards an earlier release date. And so I wrote that while I was in prison, got out of prison, then began advocating more and more. And I was a professor at San Francisco State for a year, and then publishing in law review journals. And in those law review journals, you'll see this is like in 2015. In fact, I'll see if I could find one. In 2015, I was arguing we need to have more programs that will allow people in prison to work toward getting out early. And this was just like an unheard of thing at that time. There was no way the Bureau of Prisons was doing that kind of thought. If you had 10 years, they would have wanted you to serve 8.5 years. So there was no incentives. Then I'll show you this other thing. You can see this. This is Incentivizing Excellence, a suggestion for merit-based reductions from a 26-year federal prison insider that I published in the Hastings Law Review back in 2015. And in this article, that's what I'm writing about. The importance of bringing these incentives, okay? And then because of the publishing and law review articles, opportunities open to go and influence in judicial conferences. And I was speaking in a judicial conference, and CDCR, those milestone credits, the director came to speak to me and said, hey, we want to do something like that in California. Then the Bureau of Prisons also was there and said, we're looking to do these kinds of things as well. But I'm saying I need leaders like you to become a voice to legislators in DC to change the law. Because when I was in prison, there was no such things of these incentives. So those milestones credits, Jesse, are the equivalent of earned time credits that we have in California, and our courses that if any of you want to see it, you'll see it when you get to prison probably. But if you want to see it now, I'll send it to you. Just send an email to me and I'll send you this PDF. I mean, it's going to be one of these books, you know, but if you want to see just the PDF, I'll send it to you. But what is the whole concept? The whole concept is what I am telling you right now. You've got every person in prison, every justice impacted person is part of this community. And I can't change the system by myself, but if I can show that people in prison are preparing, then I can persuade prison administrators that people are preparing, and I could ask them to join in these advocacy efforts to persuade legislators in DC or in state capitals to change the system. And that's the way the system moves, right? It's working to be the change we want to see in the world. So I do this 7 days a week. That's what those milestone credits are, Jesse. I'm really glad to be doing it, but I'm going to ask people in prison to do these courses because I need to show that they are working to prepare for success. So I hope that you will do that while you're inside. And if you want a course, send an email. I got to think of some email to send it to because I get too many emails. I can't even keep up.
Yeah, absolutely will.
Send me an email, michael@michaelsantos.com. That's just the best way. And I'll just forward a PDF. So we have Jose Torres's hands up. Let's respond to Jose. Unmute yourself, Jose. Can you unmute? You're muted. I don't know if I can unmute you.
Yeah. Can you
There
hear
we
me
go.
now?
I hear
All
you,
right.
young man.
How you doing?
I'm doing well. How are you?
Good, thanks. So my sentencing is on April the 13th.
Okay.
So I just have some questions. I heard that you spent 6 years at Fort Dix, and that's like one of the places.
8 years in Fort Dix.
Oh, 8. Okay.
I got married in
So,
Fort Dix.
Oh, really? Okay. So I you know, because it's convenient for my family for visitation at Fort Dix, New Jersey, that's one of the places that I, you know, when I get sentenced, which I'm hoping, I know there's like a 3% chance
Well, wait a minute.
that I could
wait
get
a minute.
probation.
Hope is not a strategy. Let me ask you a question. In what ways have you prepared before sentencing to get to the prison you want to go to?
I guess I haven't. I mean,
Okay. Well, then you're right.
It's
It's a lottery. Let's think about how we can prepare because you haven't been sentenced yet, right?
correct.
And you want to go to Fort Dix.
Yes.
Correct?
Well, it depends. That's what I want to ask you. What is that camp like? Is it okay? Is it not?
Okay, let's first of all talk about perspective on what camps and prisons are like. My perspective, prison is prison. It doesn't matter where you are. If you're apart from your family and the people you love, it's irrelevant. It's prison. Wherever you go, there are going to be people saying, oh my God, if I was at Fort Dix, I'd be having girls come over on the weekends and drink. I mean, it's all full of nonsense, okay?
Okay.
I did 26 years and every prison I was in was the best prison. You know why? Because it's what you do and it's what you make of it. Okay. It's what you put in your head on how you are going to prepare for the best possible outcome. And you don't do it by waiting and saying, what happens in the universe? You know, how am I going to get there? And hopefully it's a 3% chance. No. If you want to go to Fort Dix, you think about your family. Where your family, what makes it easiest for your family, wherever you are, you can be successful. I was in high security penitentiaries, medium securities, low securities, minimum security camps from coast to coast. And every time I was in a place, I'd always say, this is the best prison ever. Okay. But because it's all in what you do. So Fort Dix, I thought was great. I really did like Fort Dix because it wasn't designed to be a prison. Fort Dix is an old Army base. So you live in rooms instead of like prison cells. It doesn't look like a prison. It doesn't feel like a prison, at least compared to real prisons where I was. So I liked Fort Dix. But if you want to go there, Jose, what I think you should be doing is you should position yourself to go there now. And how do you do that? Well, this is recorded, so I'm going to record this so you don't have to type it or anything. But this is what I would like you to do. I would like you to prepare a statement for your lawyer before you go to sentencing, and ask your lawyer to submit this as part of his, not as after his sentencing memorandum when he makes a request. What he wants to say is something like this: Your Honor, my client, Jose, would like to go to Fort Dix to further his release plan. He has a group of mentors in the community who have offered to come and work with him and prepare him for jobs when he comes home. And in the interests of furthering that release plan, we would respectfully request that you recommend Fort Dix. It's within his security level. And if for any reason the Bureau of Prisons chooses not to recommend Fort Dix, we would ask that you advise the Bureau of Prisons to respond to you on why they didn't. Because there's been a lot of controversy in the Bureau of Prisons on preparing people for success. My client has worked really hard and he wants to continue that effort. Some kind of a statement like that the judge makes on the record and in this, what's called the statement of reasons. Because I've interviewed people in the Bureau of Prisons, and I've learned that if a federal judge makes a recommendation to an institution, that's a plus. But we don't ever want to talk to the judge at the Bureau of Prisons. So if the judge says, if you don't recommend him to Fort Dix or designate him to Fort Dix for any reason, please let me know why. You've just increased your chances of going to Fort Dix exponentially. So that's going to be on a recording, and we're like an hour into this, so you'll know right where to find it, Jose. It's when you're on the screen. You should take that little clip and write that for your lawyer, okay?
Yes, sir.
That's how it works.
Here's another question.
You have another question?
Well, I'm retired and have been for several years. So how do you, because I hear a lot of this about, to find a job and
No. It's okay. That's not boilerplate. It's because most people are going to have a job when they get out. If that's not applicable to you, then let's create the story that's applicable to you. So what are you going to do when you come home?
I signed up for volunteer work and spend time with my family. I really don't know that's really a good plan, and that's why I'm talking to you about what.
So are you working with somebody in our community? Forgive me, I just don't know everybody. I work on the prison side, so I don't know everybody. Do you work with somebody?
I've talked to Justin and Scott, mostly Justin. He sent me literature. Most of it's based on, getting, when you get out, to, get a job. But I'm retired, so I don't know how to.
You don't have to write about having a job if you're retired, but you do need to have a good story. Life is, what did you do for a living, Jose?
I wholesaled pharmaceuticals.
So you're in the sales business, right? Sales.
Correct.
Life is about having a good story. Let's create a good story around your life and why Fort Dix is the right place for you. The more you can build that story, the better off you are. Or you can play the lottery and see what the Bureau of Prisons decide. Are you from New York?
No, I live in Delaware.
So why do you think Fort Dix is the best place? Isn't Ferreton closer?
No, the closest, my son lives in Perryville, Maryland. So that is an hour and 45-minute drive to Fort Dix, New Jersey.
Okay, well, Fort Dix is a great spot. I liked Fort Dix a lot, but I was also in Ferreton, and it didn't matter where I was. It's always about your mindset. And I would just recommend, if you're working with somebody on our team, have them kind of architect that for you.
Awesome.
Because you should get ready before sentencing. This is the kind of thing that should be done before sentencing. Okay?
Okay, and then I give that to the lawyer to give to the judge prior to the 13th.
Yes, and you can say it too. You're going to have an opportunity to allocute at sentencing. And so you could actually make the case as well. You could say, Your Honor, you're going to want to express remorse and identify with victims and all those things in your allocution. But you're also going to probably want to say, and finally, Your Honor, if you could find it in your heart to recommend Fort Dix because my family, it makes it easier for my family. And my reentry plan is all about being close to my family and being with my grandchildren. And that would just make it easier on them. So I'm going to ask that you recommend Fort Dix, New Jersey. And that's okay. That's okay for you to do it. Advocate for yourself. You're always going to be more effective, in my view, than your attorney.
Okay.
All right.
Awesome. Thank you very much.
Good luck, Jose. Jason
you.
Miller.
Hi, Michael. Thank you very much for what you.
Oops. I screwed up, Jason, and I muted you. Could you unmute yourself?
It's
There we
all
go.
good.
Thank you, boss.
What I was saying was thank you very much for what you do for the community. I have two
You
questions.
can't
One
do
was
26 years in prison and not feel like you're still in the community. So I'm with you. But talk to me. How can I
I
help?
was there for 997 days. So yes,
I'm with you. Where were you?
I was in FCI Lompoc.
At the low? Or the medium?
I was medium and then I went to low. I never
was
made
at
it to the camp.
I was at the camp at the end of my journry.
We might know some of the same people.
For sure we do. Okay, so tell me what's going on.
So I have two questions. One, how have you managed the stigma of being formerly incarcerated?
Well, the first thing I do is whenever I meet somebody, first I say, I was in prison for 26 years. So I'm just completely open and honest about having been in prison for so long because it's did you just get out?
No, I've been home for 27 years.
You've been home for 27 years and you're still struggling. That is a great point that everybody on this community should be hearing. First of all, you don't even look 27 years old. When did you go in? When you were 4?
Thank you. The stigma rearose when I was applying for a PhD program in Indiana.
Okay, and what was the problem?
They asked me to be honest about my federal conviction. I copied it directly from the guidelines, and they said I was too honest. They said they wouldn't be able to help someone like me. Granted, I am a PhD student at a university in Arizona, and which leads me to my other question, because I was looking at your website. Do you know any journal articles or have suggestions on family connections and its connection to recidivism?
Well, that's my whole work is about that. I mean, I've got a massive amount of content on there about that. But why
I'm not able to find it.
What is your goal? Like, what are you getting your PhD in?
Human systems engineering.
So technology related, not criminal justice related.
No, engineering, technology, and psychology.
Okay. I'll just give you some backstory here, Jason.
Thank you.
So in our community, one of the things that I do when I'm trying to advocate or bring things to change the system, I profile people that have gone on to do amazing things irrespective of their criminal background. And for example, my old partner, his name is Sean Hopwood. Do you know him?
I don't.
So Sean Hopwood was an armed bank robber, and he robbed 5 banks and used to have challenges with meth. I would encourage you to Google Sean, ShonHopwood. So tell me something, Jason, before I tell you what he did. What is your perception of a guy that robbed 5 banks and used to have problems with meth? And he went to prison for 10 years. Tell me about his life going forward. What do you think it is?
I could tell you my story because it's connected.
You have a similar story, you mean?
I do.
Okay. So you're a bank robber. We're a bank robber. Okay. So Sean, after 10 years, the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation give him a scholarship. He goes to law school at UW. Then Georgetown gives him a fellowship. No, he becomes a clerk, the DC Circuit Court. Now he's a tenure track professor at Georgetown Law School. And if you look at the First Step Act and you look at the video, and you'll see President Trump signing the First Step Act, Sean Hopwood standing beside him. So I've got all kinds of these stories of people that have backgrounds that would not suggest they could ever get out of prison, but now they're lawyers, they're doctors, there are some doctors, there are some, many financial services professionals. You know, there are people that have gone on to recalibrate and rebuild. And all of that happens because they start sowing seeds early. They don't say, you think about how are you going to put yourself in bringing value to the community. So if I were going to a PhD program, I would talk about why I'm going to bring value to this community. Instead of, don't think about what I want the community to do for me. What can I do for the community? And that's always worked for me. And everybody I profile that's formerly incarcerated that went on to become really successful, that's how they did it. They documented a story, an incremental, systematic pathway to success, and then they were able to advocate for themselves effectively.
Thank you.
Okay.
Yes.
Are there any other questions? Because we're on now for 11:15, but I'm here to answer to anybody that's got a question. I'm not kicking anybody out.
Hey, Michael.
Hey, who's that?
Hey, this is Charles Weston.
Hey, Charles.
Hey, no, I was one that spoke to you earlier.
I remember.
Yeah. So I heard two people, and the gentleman just spoke, and then the last guy, I think it was Jose, so I'm kind of in the same boat. I worry about trying to bring up to the Bureau of Prisons on my release plan about exactly what I'm doing afterwards. I'm an entrepreneur. I haven't worked for someone else in over 14 years. I create jobs for people is what I do. But with my particular industry, it's like me being a doctor and then doing something illegal in the doctor field and then saying, hey, I'm about to go back and do something that's similar to being a doctor, which is what got me in here in the first place. So it's more of me trying to figure out what I should say. Because me personally, what my plan is continue my business, because my business, even though it's still in the gun industry, it doesn't have to be, I don't have to participate in firearm and ammunition and things like that, which are the two things we can't be around. But it gets complicated, at least I'm making the assumption of like, how can I explain to them, hey, I'm going to actually further my business within within the lines of the law, and still not make them feel like, oh, well, we don't know how we feel about that because, they don't understand, the gun industry, so forth and so on, and what it really is. But yet I tell them, hey, I'm going to finish and make my business expand like we've been doing for years. And that's going to, for them, it's going to sound awkward.
I think it's a very valid concern, because it's kind of like, marijuana is legal in the state, it's illegal in the federal system, and people want to get involved in marijuana because it's a growing business, but there's like this gray area. And it's the same thing with guns. There's a Second Amendment constitutional right, but if you're a felon, you can't have a firearm, and you want to be in the business of firearms. So my recommendation to you is that you really take the time to flesh out this story, to really, and you've got the time. How much time is your sentence length? Could you remind me?
We're looking at about 32 months. According to them, 32.
Well, what does the judge say?
Well, no, he gave me 32, but my lawyer is telling me about, hey, I can do 80%, and then I'm hearing from you guys this possibility may even beat that. But
well, there's a big difference between a sentence and the time you're going to serve. So let's break that down, because somebody else may have that question as well. So your judge sentenced you to 32 months. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. Well, you're going to automatically get 15% off of your sentence, because you're not going to get in trouble in prison, right?
Correct. Of course.
Okay.
Not.
So 32 months, 15% off of that. That's about 3.23, 1.4. Let's just call it 3.2, 4. Let's call it 5 months. It's not quite 5 months, but call it 5 months.
Yeah, that's what I've been doing.
That takes us down to 27, right?
Correct.
Okay. Then you're going to participate in these kinds of classes, like the ones I was talking about early, these classes in prison. And because you're participating in those classes and you're not getting in trouble and everything else, you're going to get some more time off of your sentence because of earned time credits. And so on 27, you're probably going to get at least 7-8 months off of your sentence.
Michael, is that the case with the weapons charge though?
I don't know his charge. You're right. I did not ask you. What kind of charge do you have?
But the possession of machine gun parts, remember, parts, we're talking.
Thank you for clarifying that,
Yeah.
Scott. I talked to so many people, I didn't take the time to clarify. So you may have what's called a disqualifying offense, which means that you're going to be limited to that 15% off. So that's 27. But even the 27, you are going to qualify for halfway house. So under the Second Chance Act, you could get up to 12 months off of that. That doesn't mean it comes off of your sentence. It
Of course.
just means that you would be serving that sentence in a halfway house and at home. Okay. So 27, I would say you do everything right. You could be home in 20 months on 32. You can't get out really earlier than that because you do have a weapons charge, but I would say
Correct.
20 would be success rate. And you'll be able to communicate with me while you're in there. So
Correct.
while you're in there, you'll have my Core Links account and we'll communicate through Core Links.
Okay.
Okay. And then we'll talk again before you surrender.
All right.
All right, buddy.
No, that makes sense. I appreciate that.
But you do have to keep preparing. You have to keep preparing. Okay. And you
Of
got to be
course.
thinking, just like you built a successful business, you've got to be thinking about building a successful plan to get out. All right. I'll talk to you before you surrender. I see hands up. Disha, how are you? You can unmute.
I'm doing good. How are you doing?
I'm doing well. Thank you.
I just wanted to ask you, like you just gave him a rough idea, possible, not possible. I do understand. So can you give me an idea on 24 months for my boyfriend?
Is your
In 4
boyfriend,
days.
does your boyfriend have, what kind of offense does he have? I got to now ask that question, Scott.
It's the wire fraud.
Wire fraud. Okay. And is he doing, he's probably not doing RDAP, is he, with only 24 months?
No, he's not qualified for any kind of RDAP.
How long has he been in
any-
prison?
He's there since November 7 already now.
Okay.
7th
So
of
typically
November.
on a 24-month sentence, just back of the envelope projection, 24, 2.4, 3.6, that's about 21. Good time. He'll probably do 21, 6. He'll probably do, I would say 15. It'd be kind of the sweet spot. Probably 14, 15, 16, somewhere in there before he transitions home. What's he telling you?
No, I'm just asking you because I'm concerned because probably he could just qualify for CARES Act due to his health conditions.
No, the
But
CARES
I
Act,
don't have-
just so you know right now, you do know that the president has said he's not going to continue CARES, right?
Yeah, I know that.
He could try still because the BOP hasn't
Mhm.
stopped it.
Yeah, they haven't stopped it, and he's gonna be on 25% in another week next week.
Then he's got to apply. You know?
Okay.
But that's not the same thing as me saying 15. I'm saying that's kind of extraordinary. That would be phenomenal if he gets it. My mindset be putting my head around 15.
Okay.
But
Yeah, that's what I want. Like, I want to prepare myself for at least the maximum sentence and not have like.
is he
no-
American?
He's American, a U.S. citizen.
Okay, good. Okay.
This is the first offense ever.
I hope that helps, Disha. Thanks for being a part of our
Thank you so
community.
much. Thank
Okay.
you.
Angela.
Hello.
Hi.
Hi. So my boyfriend's also serving time at Fort Dix, at the camp, low maximum security.
Okay. What did you say, Matt? He's at the camp?
Yeah,
Okay.
for 24 months. But my question is this: with the credit, with the courses that he's required to take, that he's offered, there's a waiting list. But how does that work? Because when he told me about this waiting list, I wasn't understanding clearly, and he was a little confused as well with that. Is it where he isn't able to take it until he's put on, like,
Well, it
accepted
doesn't,
for
it
this?
doesn't really matter, Angela,
Okay.
because he's getting the time credits anyway, because the
Oh.
Bureau of Prisons is still evolving and he'll be getting the time credits. How long has he been there?
He went in January of this year, the 27th.
So he's
And
only been
he-
there for 3 months.
Yeah, he got his First Steps Act. He already applied for that and he got credit for that.
So you're going to see his release date continue to advance at 10 days a month for the first 6 or 7 months. And then it's going to turn to getting 15 days off a month because he'll qualify for more after 7 months.
After 7 months, he'll require more. Okay.
He'll get more. Just keep looking at his BOP sheet. There's a lot of good things happening. It's kind of slow, but I'm optimistic. And
also questions and like with the like release date and everything like that, did any like it doesn't get updated as it should.
It will this month. I know it's slow. It will get updated every month. The problem is that they've had a lot of problems with changes on how they calculate the 10 days and the 15 days.
Mhm.
And there's a big change that's happening this month. So, but he's still banking all the credits, Angela. It's all going to
Okay.
benefit him. Okay.
Okay. Yeah, because he was wondering that to make sure that the credits are applied.
Is he signed up on our newsletter? Your boyfriend?
No, but my mom did send your book to him to read, and he was actually interested in knowing about the investment thing that you were working on with the apartments, I guess. I don't know. There was that next
He's
book.
looking at old. Remember, I've been out of prison for 10 years. So those are like things that I wrote when I was. There's too many things in there.
He was asking me to send another book of yours to him. So
well, there's a whole bunch on the website. Look up at the resources and they'll be very helpful to him. And tell him that he should sign up for our newsletter so that he can get information, because I send that out every week.
And he's able to access that.
Yeah. He's just got to send an invite to Core Links.
Okay. Sounds good. Okay. Thank you so much.
Bye, Angela. SE. I see SE a hand up.
How do I put my hand?
I'm listening to SE.
Yes. Hi, Michael.
Hi.
Hello. Yeah, I spoke to you like 3 weeks ago. Samiat. Don't know if you can
from
remember.
England.
Yes.
And the policy has changed.
Yes, that's why I'm basically putting my hands up.
Oh, good. So tell me your question.
So basically, I just wanted to know what a release plan looks like currently for a non-citizen with a non-violent crime. What does that look like now? I mean, obviously,
I'll tell you what. I'm going to tell you what. How can I send a release plan? Did we send your husband a book in prison?
Yes.
Okay.
He got it. Yeah.
I'm going to show you someplace to go right now. Okay. Let me go to Chrome if I can. Share. Okay. I want you to go to this website here. This website. Do you see this website?
Yep.
Okay. Then go here to resources. Do you see that?
Yep.
And then it says our books.
Okay.
And then if you go there, scroll down, see if it's on there. There it is, a workbook. Could you send him that book?
Okay, that's fine.
That's it. Send him the book. And there's a whole book on what it looks like and everything else.
Okay.
Okay. Because I'd send it, but I have limited resources. So I just sent the last one. So if you could just get that book, that would be helpful.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. And he'll see what it's looked like. As I recall, he's got a relatively lengthy sentence, like more than a year, but he will be getting guidance on that. Is he a member of our community? Does he sign up for our newsletter?
No, but I'm going to get him to now. Now that I know that
when he gets that book, it'll tell him how to do it.
Okay.
Okay. Good luck.
Thank you.
Thank you. Home folder.
Good morning. Good afternoon, Michael. How are you?
I'm doing well. How are you?
Good. Thank you. Good. Real quick. My sentencing date is December. I've been doing all of my mitigation.
Hold on. Wait. Did you say December?
Yes. So I've got 7 months still to go.
Good for you.
Yes. So I've been doing all my due diligence, and I have a quick question in terms of mitigation. Part of my due diligence is going to the courthouse and sitting in on sentencing hearings. so I can get acclimated and familiar with the terminology and the interactions. And I've noticed that oftentimes they will debate and argue the base level offense and the other aggravating numbers for the sentencing guideline factors or numbers. So my question is this: in preparing for my pre-sentencing investigation, is that a good time to present to my probation officer facts, findings, and reasons that would support lowering some of those sentencing guideline numbers and factors? Or should I wait for the sentencing hearing and pretty much debate it before the judge?
Well, are you representing yourself?
No, I do have an attorney, but he's not very well versed in these areas. He's not
Is it
really
a federal defender?
No, it's a private attorney. He's a friend of mine and he doesn't really specialize in this area. So we're kind of doing this together. And quite frankly, I'm doing most of the research and
Okay,
myself.
here's what you should be seeing when you go to a sentencing hearing. The sentencing hearing is generally very formulaic. First, there's a pre-sentence investigation report that the probation officer prepares.
Mhm.
You are going to get an opportunity to see that probation report. So is the government. They're going to, between the two of you, you are going to agree or not agree. If you don't agree, then the judge is going to have this thing called a finding of fact. That's what you're seeing. That means probation officer said, we think it should be this amount. The U.S. attorney says, no, we think it should be this amount. And your defense attorney says, example, probation officer says, I think he should be a level 21. The U.S. attorney says, we think he should be a level 31. The defense attorney says, we think he should be a level 15. Okay. The judge is going to have to make a finding of fact. So when the judge makes a decision, that becomes the law. So it goes in different stages. All of this stuff you can't even really do until you have your pre-sentence investigation. Have you had that yet?
No. And that's why I figured as part of my mitigation, I'm going to present my narrative.
But the things that you're talking about, that's really a little bit different. You're talking about objective things. Your narrative is more of a subjective thing. It is a biography. It is helping the judge see you as your mom sees you, right? Your mom and your dad, they know that you shouldn't be going to prison. Your wife knows that you shouldn't be going to prison. But your judge, he may see you a little bit differently, or the prosecutor may see you a little bit differently. Your narrative is to try and say, this is who I am. This is how I got here. These are the influences that led me to where I am. This is what I've learned from this experience. This is how I identify with victims. This is what I'm doing to make things right. Your narrative should accomplish that goal, okay? And that's not always easy to do. It's kind of like a surgeon trying to take out his own appendix. He's probably going to go to another doctor, okay? But you can do it yourself. You just have to be very methodical and make sure you're never blaming anyone else. You're taking full responsibility and you're not minimizing the matter. That's what your narrative is for. But if you were on the whole webinar, remember what I said. The mitigation arc is long. There's many different stages here. The first one is getting ready for the charge. The second one is getting ready for the PSR, pre-sentence investigation report. Then it's getting ready for the sentencing hearing. Then it's getting ready for prison. Then it's getting ready for early release from prison. Then liberty and home confinement. Then supervised release. You see, it's like this big path. And the harder you work earlier, the better off you are. So I wouldn't get hung up on, because there's nothing you're going to be able to do to change those factors, what the probation officer says.
Okay.
You've got to change the subjective factor. What kind of case do you have?
Okay, it's money laundering.
So money laundering. So there is going to be an accusation on an amount of loss, the government's version, not your version. Nobody cares about your version, the government's version. And if the government says there is this amount of loss or this amount of crime, dollar amount, that's objective. That's what the probation officer is going to say. The defense attorney may argue differently. The U.S. attorney may argue differently. The judge will make a finding of fact. Your job, way more important than starting to argue, because you're going to try to minimize that. And that's not going to serve your interest. Instead, help the judge get to know you as a human being. Where did you grow up? What did you do? How did you learn? Who influenced you? How did you get involved in this? All of these questions, I want you thinking from the perspective of stakeholders. That's going to serve you way better, okay?
And by the way, you are correct. Fortunately, I have a judge that identifies with the defendant, that wants to know about the defendant, and seems to be very empathetic.
Where's your judge?
Los Angeles.
What's his name?
Otis Wright.
Otis Wright. I'll tell you a story. I interviewed a judge. I don't know if you guys have seen this interview, but it's on video. His name is Judge Bennett. And he said, every time when I get on trial, when I go before a case and I'm on the bench, first thing I do when the jury's seated is I step off the bench, I walk over to the defendant's table, I extend my hand, I shake the defendant's hand, I look at the jury, and I say, you know, I'm shaking the hand of an innocent man right now. He is innocent until you say differently. Okay? That's a judge that's really incredible. My judge had a little different story. He said, my judge said, now look, you got to find him guilty beyond a reasonable doubt, the law says. But that doesn't mean all doubt. You can have a little doubt and still find him guilty.
Okay, so getting back to the mitigation, just to wrap up my question. When I do interview with for the PSI, I was actually going to share it, because getting back to your mitigation arc, things we know, things that other people know that don't know. Okay.
That's what I want you to do.
Okay, so I've done my research. I've come up with the case law to show that I am entitled to mitigating, bring down the numbers as opposed to aggravating that add to the numbers. Should I share that information with my probation officer so that this person can see that I am worthy, or
you should definitely share these things with your probation officer, but not only for sentencing. I want you to share it because I want you to become a part of your permanent record. Because look, you're going to, if prison's part of your journey, there's going to come a time when you're sitting across the table from somebody, that's all they're going to look at is your probation report. So to the extent you can influence that, you're really doing yourself a big favor.
Okay, I appreciate it. I'll move on so that somebody else can have time. Thank you very much for all you do.
Weekend.
Thank you.
Frank, how are you, Frank?
Hey, how are you? Good morning.
Good morning.
I won't take much time, and you'll find it funny getting to work on the release plan questionnaire finally, and that I found that the link that was sent over no longer works.
Well,
so
let's make sure we fix that. Thank you for pointing that out. I'll see if I can get that fixed up today.
Yeah, I need to get to work on it, and certainly before surrender, because I have the luck of being able to work with you on it. But I think it looks like I have a little bit of homework to do ahead of time.
Well, you don't really. Let's set up a call. Do you have my calendar link?
I don't have your calendar link.
Okay,
now.
let's make sure. I'll follow up with you today. And how does your weekend look?
100% yours.
Okay, I'm gonna check on a teammate of mine, and the two of us are gonna call you to get ready for that release plan. We'll get it done this weekend. We'll get it started this weekend.
Thanks so much.
All right. Next fella. Jan.
Hi.
Hi.
Hi, Michael. I'm a little tired right now. My hours are a little different. I started my day at 11:30 p.m.
Oh my God. What can I do? Give me the question.
I'm being charged with conspiracy, co-conspiracy, I guess, because I tried to help. As I'm an epidemiologist and certified alcohol and substance abuse counselor, and I was trying to help someone in need, and it backfired on me. He was having medication shipped from overseas, to my home.
Are you in America or are you outside of the country?
No, I'm in the United States.
Okay.
I'm a U.S. citizen. Correct.
Okay.
So
and you said you're being charged. Does that mean you're not yet charged?
No, I have been charged.
You have been charged.
Correct.
And what stage of the proceedings are you in? Have you already had a plea? Do you have counsel, I assume?
Yes. Yes,
Okay.
I do.
Let me
great white
respond.
shark.
I'll listen now. Now that I have a little more clarity, I'll listen to the question.
Well, I'm not really sure what questions are applicable. I don't know where to begin. All I know is I feel very glad I found you, and I'm hoping we can follow up. I do need to be in contact with my attorney, who is an expert in this field, and but I'm looking at 25 years for this.
So Jan, there's a lot. You're an epidemiologist?
Correct.
So that's an MD, right?
Yes.
Okay, doctor. I know this is traumatizing, and we know we've worked with a lot of physicians. And when you see something, I'm looking at 25 years, I need you to understand that's not quite the same thing as what will happen. And what's really important is just you didn't become a doctor and an epidemiologist by accident. You trained a lot, okay?
Oh,
a lot of years that started long before you ever got to medical school. And this is a super important time of your life. You've got to learn this system, and this might not be the best time when you've been working since 11 o'clock last night, but I would recommend that you really do connect with members of our team before so that you can educate yourself. I've got a tremendous amount of free stuff on our website.
I'm grateful.
Just to help people kind of learn. These webinars are free every Thursday. You're more than welcome to attend and ask any questions. But there should be nobody, just like there was nobody working harder for you to become a medical doctor than you. This is an area where you can't outsource it to your attorney and think my attorney's an expert and he's going to look after me. You've got to understand this system, understand guidelines. You've got to understand mitigation strategies. You've got to understand everything you possibly can as early as you possibly can, because every decision you make will have collateral consequences. So
I'm doing some pre-preparation. I've been accepted into law school, figuring why not be a doctor and a lawyer. And I've also applied and been accepted as a professor at State University.
What part of the country are you in?
Northeast.
Okay. Well, look,
I am in in the middle of nowhere.
You are at a very early stage of the journey, and this is a time when you really need to do the same thing that you did when you were in high school and decided to go to medical school. First, you figured out what was the best college to go to, what was the best grades to get, how do I improve myself, get ready for, internships and residencies, and all the way through, you prepared. Make sure that this becomes a priority, because if you don't understand, you're going to, like you've heard people on our webinar today, oh, I wish I would have done the PSR thing before, prep before that. Well, it's much easier to prepare before these things happen than it is after to try and fix them. So you're in a position, right? You're in the best possible position you could be in as of today. Obviously, we wish we could have spoken with you 5 years ago before you were ever in this situation, but we can't undo the past. All we can do is start.
Hindsight is 2020.
Yeah. So I would really recommend, have you connected with Scott or with Justin or
No.
Kent or anybody on our team?
My first time connecting with anyone.
I'd really recommend you meet our team. My job,
I would love to.
I really work on the advocacy side to try and change the system, but my teammates are great and they're there to help you. Okay.
I really appreciate your time, Michael. You are obviously a godsend to so many, and your contributions and sharing your experience are incalculable.
We just
invaluable.
want to, we want to try and change the system. We're trying to be the change that we want to see in the world. So God bless you. And I do
God bless
encourage you to
you.
connect with our team. Thanks, Jen.
I will. Thank you so much.
Get some rest.
Yeah, I know.
Lawrence, how can
Bye.
I help you? You got a question? You're on mute. Mute, unmute. There we go.
Well,
Hi, Lawrence.
thank you for all your help, by the way. It's been tremendous. I have a home visit coming up on Wednesday. My first question was related to what should I expect and how can I prepare?
So is this a home visit? Give me a little backstory. What's the stage? What's the purpose of the home visit?
I had my PSR last week, and now the probation officer and a U.S. Marshal are coming to visit the home. The only information I got was the probation officer said, assume you are showing your home for sale. That's how you can approach it. And
So that's great advice. I want to let you all know a little something of things that I am learning through our advocacy efforts is, you know, everybody wants to go to home. Everybody wants to get out of prison and go to a halfway house. The problem is there's not enough halfway houses. And there is a movement to build a new plan. And that new plan is what's called day reporting centers. So a day reporting center is, and I know this from working in the Bureau of Prisons, that if a person has a job and a place to live, the movement is going to be, don't keep that person in prison, send them home. And then a day reporting center will be where you go and report and you still go home. So now you're removing the capacity problem of the halfway house, but you're increasing the capacity of home confinement because you still have to have a case manager. So a day reporting center will have employee case managers. You would go, Lawrence, from your home to the day reporting center and then go back home. You're never going to sleep there. It's not a piece of cake. It's still prison, but you're not in a real prison. So if you ask what the purpose of that home visit is, given your stage, I'm guessing they are assessing, do you have this kind of stability? Are you a good candidate for this? Okay. That's going to be my guess because you haven't been to prison yet, right?
No.
You haven't been sentenced yet, right?
No, my sentencing is June 2nd.
Okay. So maybe you're being assessed for the possibility of a home confinement or a non-incarcerative sentence. So, yeah.
Well, that's good because she did say she doesn't do home visits with everyone.
Yeah, it's unusual. So, but I happen to know through the advocacy work, this is a movement that's coming. Okay. So good luck.
All right, thank you. Quickly, my second question was related to finding a fact and mitigation during the sentencing process. I've argued with my attorney back and forth that I'm trying to seek a lower anchor point for the judge to start with, because what I've noticed with this judge's sentencing patterns, as this judge will go maybe 1 or 2 points lower than what the probation determines is the sentencing range.
Can I ask what kind of case you have?
It's wire fraud.
So is there an amount of loss that?
Yeah. So it's over 500,000, but less than 1.5 million, which is.
And what is it that you're trying to get the government to see as a starting point?
So right now I'm at a 17 and the government's agreed to one additional downward variance for exceptional responsibility acceptance. And then possible 1 or 2 points more for early repayment of the loans and lack of a profit motive. But those aren't guaranteed. And I told the attorney, I don't really want you to argue those as sentencing. I want to see if the probation, if all the work we've been doing with this probation officer, we could start at a 15, because then this judge might go to a 14 or a 13, and he doesn't seem to get it, but maybe I'm completely wrong about it.
Yeah, I don't think the probation officer is going to do it. That's the purpose of the sentencing hearing. is that the judge will listen to the argument and make a decision. That's the finding of fact, right? It's before that, probation officer can say whatever he wants. U.S. attorney can say whatever he wants. The defense attorney and the U.S. attorney are supposed to come together, but if they don't, that's that finding of fact. And that's what you'll see at every sentencing hearing. That's the first stage of a sentencing hearing.
So, so the finding of fact doesn't mean that's what the sentence is. The judge could still say, I'm going to go.
There's going to be a series of findings, right?
Right.
There's going to be, I mean, have you gotten your PSR yet?
No, April 29th. I'll get it.
Is when you're going to have the interview or when you're going to get the report?
When I'm going to get the PSR.
Okay. Once you get the PSR, that's when you're going to make a determination, is this right? Okay. You're going to have a view, the government's going to have a view, and then theoretically they're going to work together to come to an agreement. If they can't come to an agreement, the judge will make a finding of fact. But you can't do anything now because you don't even know what probation officer is going to say.
Yeah. So that's okay. So that's clear in my mind. They're going to say the sentencing range and the guidelines is a 15. That would be great, or 16, even 1 point below. So then we could have debate and discussion, and my attorney could present his motion for downward variance, sentencing memorandum, and ask for probation. But the judge would have to go below that guideline.
All of that is possible at sentencing.
I'm just thinking in my head, it's easier for a federal judge to go like 1 or 2 levels down versus 4 levels down.
I've seen judges go 10 levels down.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, they've got the discretion, all the discretion in the world. It's up to the individual to make the case. You've got to be the best advocate for yourself at that sentencing hearing. And then you got to continue doing it if you go to prison.
Yeah, on a side note, the probation officer said, I know there's a big push for PPP loan for people to get really harsh sentences related to PPP loan. But she said, and the attorney said, well, what's your take on it? She said, well, you found the right person. That's all she said to me. In other words, she's not going to be swayed by that, recommending a harsher sentence just because it is a government initiative, though.
Let's see what happens. All right. Thank you, Lawrence. I'm going to take Joseph's question now.
Okay, I have an issue. I took my case to trial and won on some counts and lost on others. They were trying to go 20 to life. I ended up with 0 to 20. So it's completely at the judge's discretion.
Wait a second. You went to trial, convicted on how many counts?
So there were 4 counts and an enhancement. So I'm a physician. I prescribe medications. Patient died in police custody after not having their medicine for 20 hours. The police called the family and said he died of an overdose. The DEA ran with it. The coroner disagreed. So we had the coroner at trial. We had the medical examiner. But they can still argue that, you should not have been prescribing the medication at all because you put them at risk of addiction. That's a big thing the DEA is doing right now. And, the physicians will argue that everyone prescribed an opiate is at risk of addiction. This guy was a prison guard and he had already had horrible back injuries from an industrial accident before he became a guard. Then he suffered part of his hand being crushed off. So it was a terrible thing. So they're trying to give me extra time in prison for the first prescription I wrote him when he came to see me after the emergency room. So
Doctor, how long ago was this? How long ago were you convicted?
It was October.
And you had your pre-sentence investigation report, I presume, by now.
I do have the report back, yes.
And when is your sentencing hearing?
It hasn't been scheduled because the CDC came out a week after my conviction and basically verified everything I said. So there's a motion to overturn. And I'm wondering, how do I show remorse? I'm not sure what I'm supposed to.
It's not only about this is like, okay, let me like put this into, do you work with anybody on our team right now?
I've been watching your things and chatting and everything. It took 3.5 years to come to trial. So I am sadly and extremely, I haven't worked in 3.5 years. So it's been very tough, and you guys have a lot of great free stuff I've been taking full advantage of.
Good. I
And I will donate if I ever get back to work.
No, but I want you to, but I want you to understand, you've got a really important, your judge is going to identify with you. Okay. In some respects, you're both professionals. You've both gone to school. You've both led careers. You're in a terrible situation right now. Expressing remorse isn't the only thing that you have to do at sentencing. You have to help the judge understand who you are as a human being. Okay. So we have a course on that you might take a look at, because you're probably super good at this kind of thing. You should talk with Scott about it, but I can basically tell you what it is, Doc. You're a lawyer. Do you have a public defender?
I do not. I was able to pay for an attorney 3 years ago, and he has very gamely continued defending me.
Have you seen the interviews I did with federal judges on video?
I have watched 2 of them, yes, sir.
Okay, there's a lot more, but they're not all on video. So I'm just going to, they all say the same thing. They all say, I know what your attorney is going to say. I know what the prosecutor is going to say. I don't know enough about the defendant. It's not only about expressing remorse here. It's about helping the judge get to know who you are. And so what does that mean? You look super young still, so you might talk about, where did you grow up? When did you decide that you wanted to be a doctor? Who were the influences in your life? What motivated you through school? How hard did you work? What was your passion on your take on the Hippocratic Oath? All of these factors you're going to want to elaborate on. So the judge is not only listening to your attorney, he's got to see you and know you and feel you. Okay. And although you can't be remorseful for something you didn't do, you might be, and I don't know enough about your story, but I know that if we spoke for a couple of hours, I would find some kind of a theme in there that would reflect who you are. And more importantly, what are you doing? What have you done? You said, I haven't worked for 3 years. Did you lose your license?
No, I did not. The medical board had already evaluated those same patients and had determined that I had acted reasonably. It's the whole opioid crisis. We have to blame someone. So the board, I'm still licensed. I started a master's program in addiction studies. If they claim I don't know enough about something, then it's always been my policy to become an expert in that area. So I'm completing a master's degree in addiction studies.
And that's what you're going to want to write about. You're telling me things right now that you've got to tell the judge, and you can't come late. This is something you should be planning and like laying out. Okay, I could just do it like this. This is on video, so you can just kind of record it. I'm going to record it. You don't have to write anything down. Your Honor, I just stand before you humiliated and ashamed and embarrassed for my community, my profession, and my family to be standing here before you as a convicted felon. I recognize that on advice of counsel, there are legal matters that are really beyond my ability to fully understand. So I can't get into situations of the case, but I thought it might be helpful for you to know who I am and you to know how I got here, and let you know a little bit more about what I've learned from this experience and what I am doing to make things right. And with that end in mind, I just want to give you this backstory of my life. And then we start. I grew up in Ohio, and my father was an electrician and my mom was a teacher, and I just wanted to be a good student and I wanted to do better, and I was always influenced to help people. Tell me that story, and then walk me through on that story and say, and then I got out of medical school and this was my goal to do this type of thing. And I've learned this process of practicing medicine, but I've also learned that there's a crossroads between medicine and the law. And I realized I need to do better, because I really regret that I didn't understand this part of the law when I was practicing. And for that reason, I enrolled and I found, where can I do it? Because I know that if I'm not an expert in something, study it and become an expert. And that's why I'm in school right now. The past 3, I mean, you just tell that story, and that's something that you can do, and that's what I would encourage you to do.
I appreciate that so much, because realistically, thinking of what to say to the judge has been the most stressful thing to me.
I can appreciate that. I've met so many physicians that really committed their life to helping and curing and healing. And unfortunately, they went into this, this is the greatest social injustice of our time. And people don't understand how big it is. And that's why it takes a community and a team to try and work toward it. And I'm glad you're a part of our community.
I appreciate you so much. Thank you, Mike.
Thanks, Joseph. Jesse G.
Hey, it's Michael. It's me again.
Hi.
I want to touch base on that a PSR. On my PSR for my case, they had recommended 262 months to 272 months. And again, I didn't know about you until after my sentencing, so I'm sure that release plan would have helped way before. But I was lucky enough from my attorney.
Can I get a timeout here? Because this is a bit complicated for me to understand. 262 months, but you're out. You're in the community. You have not been sentenced yet, correct?
I have been sentenced.
And what did you get?
I got 28 months.
Where did 262 months come from?
So I was involved in an infringement case, and their fluffed up numbers was that we caused a $168 million loss to the cable companies. And our attorneys I have co-defendants as well. We all been sentenced accordingly.
But the judge didn't make that finding clearly.
I'm sorry?
The judge did not make a finding that would result in a 260-month sentence, right?
No, because prior to sentencing, my attorney and prosecution were able to my attorney was like, can you guys actually prove the loss of $168 million? Show us where they actually lost this. And like it's been a long thing. This has been since November 2019. So this has been a long time going on through back of the attorney, prosecution, back and forth. So then all of a sudden the experts in the cable said, you know what, maybe it's closer to 60 million. So that opened our door, like, okay, they have no idea how to calculate this amount of loss they're trying to say that we actually caused. So at the end of the day, my attorney was able just to get to the amounts, to the gross amount that I had received through me and everybody pretty much in that in the copyright scheme. So I was responsible for they had me at 4.2 million on I
Jesse,
did gross, but
let me get to the question. Get me to the question.
So my thing is how, well, it wasn't more of a question, it was more of what you were saying as far as the judge does have the power to drop it down, because he basically said, and like I said, I didn't meet you until after, but I did have a good plan. When I was out there for the elocution, I just wrote a beautiful speech. I can see in his eyes, he loved it. He even said before he sentenced me, "This is a sad day. You look like a great father. I mean, you're a great father." I had about 20 character letters and all the good stuff in there. And he said, I feel that for an infringement case, having that guideline would not apply here. Like there was victims, but the victims were big media. So I just want people to understand and know that, yeah, it is possible for a judge to have that power to say, that's a little too much for you. And I'm living proof of that. Like I said, I got 28 months. I wish I didn't do any time, but it's a hell of a lot better than 262.
Yeah, it's a lot better. And I appreciate you for giving us that backstory, because a lot of people are in that early stage and they get their attorneys put them in a crisis, a mental crisis. It leads to problems with family. It leads to all types of other challenges. And so I appreciate you letting them know. that you got a good outcome, and I'm super happy for you. But I do want to say I got to disconnect. It's already been 2 hours, and I got to get to work. So,
well, thank you for all you do, Michael. Thank you for everybody.
I
I'm working
appreciate
on a
everybody in
release
our
plan.
community, and we hope that you'll be back next Thursday with questions. And that engagement is what makes this really a lot more exciting. So thanks so much, everybody. We will record this and publish it on the YouTube channel and so on. Thank you. Bye-bye.